June 10th, 1179. The plains of Marj Ayyun, near the Litani River. This is the battle that shattered King Baldwin IV's confidence, the moment Saladin proved he could trap the unbeatable Leper King. 2 years earlier, Baldwin had humiliated Saladin at Montgisard, destroying nearly 3/4 of his army with just 500 knights. The odds were 26-1, and Baldwin won. Saladin barely escaped with his life. But now, the roles have reversed. At Marj Ayyun, Baldwin's army charges downhill, smashes Saladin's raiders, and celebrates victory. The knights dismount. The infantry catches up. Everything seems secure. Then Saladin's real army appears. What the Franks thought was the main force, just bait. The actual strike force, hidden, waiting, disciplined, falls on them like a hammer. The Crusader line disintegrates. Knights are cut down mid-rest, and Baldwin, ravaged by leprosy, unable to fight or even mount a horse properly, has to be carried off the battlefield by his bodyguard while men die buying him seconds. This isn't just a military defeat. This is the day Baldwin realizes his body is failing him at the worst possible moment. The day Saladin learns he can beat the Franks not with brute force, but with patience. And the consequences? Within 2 months, Saladin will obliterate the Crusaders' most ambitious fortress project and begin the countdown to the fall of Jerusalem itself. So how did the king, who won the impossible battle at Montgisard, get outplayed so completely? How did Saladin turn a Frankish victory into a rout in under an hour? And why did this single defeat terrify Baldwin more than any battle he'd ever fought? This is the story of the trap that changed everything. The weight of victory. Let's rewind. November 1177. Montgisard. Baldwin IV rides into legend. He's 17 years old, already showing signs of leprosy, and facing an army of over 26,000 men with barely 500 knights. He wins anyway. The charge at Montgisard doesn't just defeat Saladin, it annihilates him. The Sultan's army scatters across the desert. His personal guard dies around him. Saladin himself flees on a racing camel, humiliated, broken, certain his empire is finished. It isn't. Here's what Baldwin doesn't understand in that moment of triumph. Victories don't end wars. They escalate them. Saladin survives Montgisard. He retreats to Egypt. He rebuilds. And most importantly, he studies. He replays every moment of that disaster. The Frankish cavalry charge, the timing, the aggression, the way Baldwin committed everything to one decisive blow. Saladin doesn't make excuses. He learns. And while Saladin is learning, Baldwin is dying. Stay with me. The crumbling kingdom. By 1178, the Leper King's body is at war with itself. His right eye is failing. His hands are weakening, the fingers curling, losing grip strength. The disease that announced itself in his childhood is now accelerating. Every month brings new damage, new limitations. But the physical decay is only half the problem. Baldwin's kingdom is fracturing from within. The nobility has split into factions. On one side, aggressive lords like Raynald of Chatillon and the Templars, pushing for constant offense, raids into Muslim territory, no negotiation. On the other, cautious voices like Raymond of Tripoli, arguing for diplomacy, consolidation, survival. Baldwin sits between them, trying to hold the center. But everyone can see what's happening to him. Everyone is calculating. If the king dies, when the king dies, who takes power? Who controls the regency? Who inherits the throne? The vultures are circling before the body is cold. And outside the kingdom's borders, the noose is tightening. Saladin isn't just rebuilding his army, he's repositioning his empire. Egypt to the south, Syria to the north, key cities falling under his direct control, trade routes, supply lines, strategic geography. He's surrounding the Crusader states, slowly, methodically, like a python. For him, Early 1179, Baldwin knows he needs to act. He needs a bold move, something to disrupt Saladin's momentum, prove he can still lead, silence the whispers about regencies and succession. He chooses Jacob's Ford, the fortress that started a war. Jacob's Ford sits on the Jordan River. It's a crossing point, one of the few places where armies, merchants, and pilgrims can move between Crusader and Muslim territory. Control Jacob's Ford, and you control movement. You control trade. You control water access in a land where water means everything. Baldwin decides to build a fortress there, not a watchtower, not an outpost, a massive stone castle that will strangle Saladin's ability to move freely between his territories. The Templars take the lead. Construction begins in the spring of 1179. Workers swarm the site. Walls rise from the riverbank. Saladin watches, and Saladin panics. He sends envoys to Baldwin offering 60,000 dinars, a fortune, to stop construction. Tear it down. Walk away. Baldwin refuses. Think about that. Saladin, the man who commands armies across 2 continents, is trying to bribe a 20-year-old leper king to stop building a single castle. That's how dangerous Jacob's Ford is. That's how clearly Saladin sees the threat. Baldwin's refusal is defiance. It's a statement. It says, I'm still here, I'm still fighting, and I will not be bought. But defiance has consequences. The border raids intensify. Saladin's cavalry probes Crusader territory. Skirmishes flare. Tension builds. War is coming. Everyone knows it. The only question is where Saladin will strike. The bait. Early June 1179. Saladin moves. He marches north with a substantial force, crossing into territory near the Litani River. Crusader scouts track his movement. Reports flood back to Baldwin. Saladin is raiding. Saladin is in the open. Saladin is vulnerable. Here's where it gets dangerous. On the surface, Saladin's campaign looks like a standard raiding operation. Hit villages, burn crops, steal livestock, pressure the Franks, force them to react. But Saladin isn't raiding, he's fishing. He positions his forces near Marj Ayyun, an open plain with clear sight lines. He makes sure the Crusaders can see him. He wants to be found. And then he waits. The bait is set. The trap is ready. All he needs is for Baldwin to take it. The decision. June 9th, 1179. Baldwin receives the reports. Saladin is camped in the open. His force looks manageable. The terrain favors a cavalry charge. Downhill approach, clear ground, no obstacles. Baldwin is under pressure. The factions are watching. The whispers about his health are growing louder. He needs a victory. He needs to prove, to his nobles, to his enemies, to himself, that the king who shattered Saladin at Montgisart is still capable of leading. He commits. The Frankish army musters. Knights, Templars, infantry. It's not the full strength of the kingdom, but it's a serious force. Enough to crush a raiding party, enough to send a message. They march toward Marj Ayyun. Watch what happens next. The false victory. June 10th, morning. The Crusader army reaches the high ground overlooking Saladin's position. Below them on the plain they can see the Muslim camp. Raiders, cavalry screens. It looks exactly like what the scouts reported. Baldwin gives the order. The Frankish knights charge downhill. Heavy cavalry at full gallop, the most devastating weapon in medieval warfare. The ground shakes. The thunder of hooves rolls across the valley. Saladin's screening force doesn't stand. They fold. They scatter. They run. The Crusaders smash through them like a hammer through glass. Bodies fall. Horses trample the wounded. The raiders flee in every direction. Victory. The knights slow their horses. They've covered a lot of ground in the charge. The animals are breathing hard. The men are hot, armored, exhausted from the intensity of combat. They dismount. This is standard practice. After a heavy cavalry charge, you rest your horses. You regroup. You let the infantry catch up to consolidate the position. The Frankish infantry arrives. The army reunites. Knights drink water. Squires check equipment. The tension drains from the air. They've won. It's over. Saladin's raid has been crushed, except it isn't over. Saladin's real army is still hidden, waiting, watching, and the Franks have just done exactly what Saladin needed them to do. They've dismounted, they've scattered, they've relaxed. The trap is about to close. The jaws close. Put yourself on that plane for a moment. You're a Frankish knight. You've just charged downhill, shattered the enemy, watched them run. Your horse is lathered. Your arms ache from swinging a sword. The sun is brutal, and you're wrapped in 40 pounds of chainmail. You dismount. You take a breath. You think, we won. Then you hear it. Hoofbeats, not retreating, approaching, thousands of them. You look up, and the horizon fills with cavalry. Saladin's main force. Hidden, beyond the ridgeline, fresh, disciplined, waiting for exactly this moment. Crashes into the Frankish position like a wave breaking on rocks. This is the genius of the trap. Saladin didn't need complicated tactics. He didn't need superior numbers at the point of contact. He needed one thing: patience. He sacrificed his screening force. Let them absorb the Frankish charge. Let them die, because their job wasn't to win. Their job was to make the Crusaders think they'd already won. And the moment the Franks believed it, the moment they dismounted, scattered, dropped their guard, that's when the real army struck. Chaos. The Crusader line doesn't break. It evaporates. Knights scramble for their horses. Some make it. Most don't. A dismounted knight is a slow knight. All that armor that makes you invincible on horseback turns you into a stumbling target on foot. The infantry tries to form defensive lines, but there's no time. Saladin's cavalry floods the field from multiple directions. They're not charging in one mass. They're flowing around the Frankish positions, isolating groups, cutting off retreat. This is how you destroy an army, not by overwhelming it head-on, but by breaking it into pieces and killing each piece separately. Frankish knights find themselves surrounded in clusters of 5, 10, 15 men. They fight back to back. They die that way too. The Templars, the elite of the elite, try to organize a countercharge. It fails. There's no coherent line to charge from, no formation to anchor, just chaos. Men who were celebrating victory 5 minutes ago are now fighting for their lives. And in the center of this catastrophe, King Baldwin IV faces a nightmare he never imagined. The king who couldn't fight. Here's the cruelest part of Marj Ayyun. Baldwin is a warrior king. He proved it at Montgisard. He's brave, he's aggressive, he's willing to lead from the front, to put himself in danger alongside his men, but his body won't let him fight anymore. Leprosy has progressed too far. His hands can barely grip a sword. His legs struggle to control a horse. In the chaos of close combat, where split-second reactions mean life or death, Baldwin is helpless. He can't fight. He can barely ride. And every knight assigned to protect him is a knight not protecting the line. Think about that. The king's presence, which should inspire his army, has become a liability. His bodyguards aren't fighting the enemy. They're shielding Baldwin. They're trying to get him out. And men are dying to make that happen. The escape. Baldwin's household knights make a decision. The battle is lost. The only priority now is saving the king. They form a wedge around him, a tight cluster of armored men on horseback, cutting through the chaos toward the edge of the battlefield. Baldwin is in the center. He can barely stay mounted. Knights on either side grip his arms, his saddle, keeping him upright. Saladin's cavalry sees the movement. They know what that formation means. They know who's in the middle. The pursuit is immediate. What follows is a running fight across miles of broken terrain. Baldwin's escort trying to break contact. Muslim cavalry trying to close the gap. Men falling on both sides. Knights peel off from Baldwin's group to buy time, turning to face pursuers, fighting hopeless rearguard actions. They know what they're doing. They know they won't survive. They do it anyway. Every minute Baldwin stays free, someone else dies for it. The escape route leads toward Beaufort Castle, Crusader territory, safety. But the distance feels infinite. The horses are exhausted. The pursuers keep coming. Baldwin makes it. Barely. He reaches Crusader lines with a fraction of his escort remaining. The rest are dead or captured on the road behind him. The king is safe. But something inside him has broken. The cost. The full casualty count at Marj Ayyun is never precisely recorded. But the losses are devastating. Dozens of knights killed or captured. The armored elite that takes years to train and a fortune to equip. The Templar contingent is gutted. Several prominent nobles are taken prisoner. The ransoms alone will drain the kingdom's treasury. But the material losses aren't the real damage. The real damage is psychological. For 2 years, the Crusader states have operated on a single assumption. Baldwin can beat Saladin. Montezard proved it. The Leper King is unbeatable. God is on his side. Marj Ayyun destroys that assumption. Baldwin didn't just lose a battle. He was outmaneuvered, outthought, trapped like a novice. And when the trap closed, he couldn't fight his way out. He had to be carried to safety while his men died around him. The whispers that were already circulating about Baldwin's health, about succession, about whether the kingdom needs a new leader, grow louder. And Saladin? Saladin isn't finished. The hammer falls. Saladin understands momentum. He knows that victory means nothing if you don't exploit it. Within days of Marj Ayyun, he pivots. He turns his army south, toward Jacob's Ford, the fortress that Baldwin refused to abandon, the castle that Saladin tried to buy for 60,000 dinars, the symbol of Frankish defiance. It's still unfinished. The walls are up, but not complete. The garrison is strong, over 1,000 men, including Templars, but they're not ready for what's coming. Saladin arrives in late August 1179. He doesn't negotiate, he doesn't offer terms, he attacks. The siege of Jacob's Ford. The siege is brutal and fast. Saladin's engineers identify a weakness in the northern wall, a section where the mortar hasn't fully cured. They dig a mine beneath it. They pack the tunnel with wood and combustibles. They set it on fire. The wall collapses. Muslim soldiers pour through the breach. The fighting inside the fortress is savage, room to room, wall to wall. The Templars make them pay for every foot. But it's not enough. The garrison falls. Over 700. Defenders are killed. The survivors, including wounded Templars, are executed or enslaved. Saladin orders the fortress demolished stone by stone. Jacob's Ford, the project Baldwin staked his reputation on, is erased from the map. Baldwin receives the news at his court. The fortress he built to strangle Saladin is gone. The men he sent to hold it are dead. The statement of defiance he made by refusing Saladin's bribe has been answered with fire and blood. And there's nothing he can do about it. His army is shattered from Marj Ayyun. His treasury is drained by ransoms. His body is failing more each month. The initiative has shifted. From this moment forward, Baldwin will never again dictate the terms of the war. Saladin will. The lesson. So what did Saladin actually do at Marj Ayyun? He didn't outfight the Franks. He didn't overwhelm them with numbers. He didn't rely on superior equipment or technology. He outthought them. The trap at Marj Ayyun is a masterclass in psychological warfare. First, he used the Franks' aggression against them. He knew Baldwin needed a victory. He knew the Crusader cavalry would charge if given a target. So he gave them one, a screening force designed to lose. Second, he manipulated tempo. The initial victory created a psychological pause. The Franks relaxed. They shifted from combat mode to recovery mode. That transition, that mental exhale, is when Saladin struck. Third, he exploited structural weakness. The Frankish army had a built-in vulnerability. Their cavalry moved faster than their infantry. That gap, the split between knights and foot soldiers, created windows of disorder. Saladin timed his attack to hit exactly when that disorder was at its peak. And fourth, the cruelest insight, he understood what Baldwin's leprosy meant tactically. A healthy king can stabilize a broken line. He can rally men. He can lead a countercharge. He can be the anchor that holds everything together. Baldwin couldn't do any of that. His presence was a burden, not an asset. Saladin didn't just beat Baldwin's army. He beat Baldwin's body. The man who learned. Remember Montgisard, November 1177. Saladin overconfident, Saladin careless. Saladin caught in the open with his army scattered, smashed by a charge he never saw coming. That Saladin died at Montgisard. Not physically, but the commander who made those mistakes? Gone. The Saladin who fought at Marj Ayun is a different man. Patient, disciplined, willing to sacrifice pieces to win the game, willing to let his enemy taste victory before taking everything away. This is what separates great commanders from good ones. Good commanders learn tactics. Great commanders learn from humiliation. Saladin replayed Montgisard 1,000 times. He studied how Baldwin fought, the aggression, the commitment, the all-or-nothing cavalry charges, and he built a trap specifically designed to exploit those tendencies. At Montgisard, Baldwin's aggression was his greatest weapon. During Marj Ayun, Saladin turned that same aggression into a fatal weakness. The Leper King didn't change. Saladin did. And that made all the difference. Baldwin's dilemma. In the months after Marj Ayun, Baldwin faces an impossible choice. He's still king. He still commands the loyalty of his vassals. Most of them, anyway. He still has armies, fortresses, resources. But he knows the truth now. His body has become a strategic liability. Every time he takes the field, he risks another Marj Ayun. Another battle where his guards have to protect him instead of fight. Another disaster where his physical limitations cost lives. But if he doesn't take the field, if he stays behind while others lead, the factions will tear the kingdom apart. Raymond of Tripoli will push for one policy. Reynold of Chatillon will push for another. The Templars will do whatever they want. And every ambitious lord will see a dying king hiding in his castle. Weakness to be exploited. Baldwin is trapped between two deaths. Lead from the front, and his body fails him at the worst moment. Lead from behind, and his kingdom fractures without his presence to hold it together. There's no good option. Only less bad ones. The shift. After 1179, Baldwin's strategy changes. No more aggressive campaigns. No more bold fortress projects on enemy borders. No more trying to strangle Saladin's empire through offensive action. The Crusader states go defensive. Baldwin focuses on holding what he has, strengthening existing fortifications, managing the factions, trying to arrange a succession that won't collapse into civil war the moment he dies. It's the right decision, probably the only decision. But it means something crucial. The initiative belongs to Saladin now. He decides when to raid. He decides when to siege. He decides when to negotiate and when to attack. The Crusaders react. They respond. They defend. They don't dictate anymore. This is the legacy of Marj Ayun. Not just the battle lost, but the momentum surrendered. The confidence shattered. The permanent shift in who controls the tempo of the war. The countdown. Baldwin IV will live another 6 years after Marj Ayun. 6 years of managing a kingdom that's slowly falling apart. 6 years of watching his body deteriorate. Blindness spreading. Limbs withering. the disease consuming him piece by piece. 6 years of political maneuvering, faction management, desperate attempts to secure a stable succession. He'll have moments of defiance. In 1183, he'll personally lead an army to confront Saladin again, carried on a litter because he can no longer ride. The sight of the leper king, half dead but still fighting, will rally his men and force Saladin to withdraw without battle. But these are holding actions, delays. The trajectory is set. Baldwin dies in 1185. He's 24 years old. The kingdom he leaves behind is fractured, exhausted, and led by men who lack his ability to balance the factions. Within 2 years of his death, the disasters he spent his reign preventing will arrive all at once. In 1187, Saladin destroys the Crusader field army at the Battle of Hattin. It's a trap, another trap, and the Franks walk into it just like they did at Marj Ayyun. The kingdom's military strength is annihilated in a single afternoon. 3 months later, Jerusalem falls. The city that launched 100,000 Crusaders eastward. The city Baldwin spent his entire reign defending. Gone. And it all traces back to a June morning on the plains of Marj Ayyun. The Echo. Here's what Saladin understood that Baldwin never fully grasped. Traps don't need to be complicated. They need patience, and the willingness to let your enemy think they've already won. At Marj Ayyun, Saladin didn't invent new tactics. He didn't deploy secret weapons. He used the oldest trick in military history, the feigned retreat, the sacrificial bait, the hidden reserve. But he executed it perfectly. And he executed it against an enemy who should have known better. The Franks had been in the Holy Land for 80 years by 1179. They'd fought dozens of battles against Muslim armies. They knew about feigned retreats. They knew about traps. They charged anyway, because they were confident, because they'd won at Montgisard, because Baldwin needed a victory and saw what he wanted to see. Saladin didn't beat the Frankish army. He beat Frankish psychology. And once he understood how to do that, once he proved to himself that patience and discipline could defeat Crusader aggression, he never forgot. Hattin, 8 years later, is the same lesson applied on a larger scale. Another trap. Another Frankish army baited into attacking at the wrong moment. Another catastrophe born from overconfidence. Marj Ayyun was the rehearsal. Hattin was the performance, the ghost of Jacob's Ford. The fortress at Jacob's Ford was never rebuilt. Saladin's demolition was thorough. The stones were scattered. The wells were poisoned. The site was abandoned. For decades afterward, travelers passing the Jordan River crossing would see the ruins, broken walls, collapsed towers, a monument to ambition that overreached. Baldwin ordered that fortress built because he believed he could strangle Saladin's empire. He believed the aggressive king who won at Montgisard could keep winning forever. Marj Ayyun taught him otherwise. Jacob's Ford was the price of the lesson. The last image. Late August 1179. Baldwin stands on the walls of a Crusader fortress. Some accounts say Beaufort, others place him elsewhere, watching the horizon to the south. He can't see Jacob's Ford from here. It's too far. But he knows what's happening. The smoke has been visible for days. His scouts have reported the collapse of the walls, the slaughter of the garrison, the systematic destruction of everything he built. The fortress he staked his defiance on is burning. The war he thought he could win is slipping away. And the body that carried him to glory at Montgisard, the body that charged into 26,000 men and came out victorious, is rotting around him. He's 19 years old. Saladin didn't just win a battle that day. He taught Baldwin and the entire Crusader kingdom that traps don't need to be complicated. They just need patience. And the willingness to let your enemy think they've already won. The smoke rises from Jacob's Ford. Baldwin watches until the light fades. He doesn't speak. There's nothing left to say.